Hello, YouTube. This is Dragon Soul here. Um, I have actually talked about this a little bit on some comments before, but I will be showing off some rank 8 Toolbox variants of the Ogdoadic deck. This is a personal pet deck of mine, a deck that I have been personally enjoying a lot. It's got a lot of lines, a lot of fun, and it's pretty wacky. So let's just get this started so I can explain everything. We'll start off with just some of the basic stuff. The starters, you got the 3 Nunu and the 3 Noya. These guys are your basic starters. They get you going by simply sending them from your hand to the grave. They will send the opposing attribute Reptile from your deck to the graveyard. Nunu also comes back if you control no monsters or no Ogdoadic, while Noya on summon will search spell a trap. These two are pretty integral to the strategy, so there's pretty much no way you're avoiding running these things at less than 3. I did consider running Noya at 2 for a time, just because it's the weaker starter at times, but there's a line that I figured out to kind of mitigate this and make it actually kind of good now. Next, you got the one-off Zoha. Lots of the Ogdoadic cards I'm going to mention, I think you can just see the list already. Pretty much everything else is a one-off, other than, well, you know who. Since you don't really want to draw too many of these are cards that you can just foolish a ton, and you will be pretty much fine, since you won't see them in your hand a lot. Zoha's effect lets you... The first effect is actually something that I think is underrated. I've seen a lot of people just say, never use this first effect, it's terrible. That's incorrect. You need to know how to use it at the right timing, and I'll explain a bit more with some other cards, but this card's first effect is actually pretty relevant. The second one, though, is definitely better. By sending a card from your hand to the grave, you can add them back to your hand. This effect lets you basically get rid of Garnets in your hand, put them in your hand as a normal summon, and it is pretty solid all around. Definitely worth the slot. Flogos also exists, but we don't talk about him. He sucks really badly. Don't run him, please. He's not good. Then we got the Light and the Dark, Curse, and Outlet. By tripping 1, they'll summon themselves, but your opponent will get to get a monster back from their graveyard, either summoning it with its effects negated on Curse, or adding it to their hand with Outlet. Outlet's drawback is much harsher, so I'd recommend being much more careful with bringing it back like this. If you know that they got something you don't want to see them mad back, then don't do this. But usually Curse's drawback is minimal at best. It almost never matters. So do not worry about this drawback. It's basically non-existent. When Curse is summoned, you get to bring back a level 4 Ogdoadic in your graveyard. You have, of course, Noya, and since Noya can pitch the Curse, these two synergize extremely well. So, just by turning a monster, you'll be able to summon 2 bodies and get a free search for a spell trap, which is, again, very solid. And this is your main playmaker, your extender. You need this thing at all times. Outlet, I've seen people cut. I like having just the grind extension with him, and the fact that he's level 8. Or she, whatever you want to call it. It returns 2 of your banished monsters, including a Reptile, to the graveyard, which is just nice recursion, and it does come up a decent amount. More so the fact that it's level 8 body, though, than anything else. Then we got Aaron, and Amnesia, and Ogdoadic, the trio of the bosses of the Ogdoadic archetype. These guys, they're really good. I think most people know about Ogdoadic. He's a 3 tribute, but I've summoned him, like, a couple times this way. You do it every so often, but it's not frequent. It's like, hey, it's nice to have that effect, but don't do it a lot. The other thing, though, is that, of course, he's got that mini Zeus effect. Once while he's on the field, any monster that isn't summoned from the graveyard will be immediately sent to the graveyard. And it's a quick effect, so, good luck surviving this. This is going to be a nasty effect. Amnesia and Aaron are the king and queen. They are only 2 tributes required, and you do summon them by this method. 2 tributes is not a lot. Because if you're saying 2 tributes is a lot, I'm going to point to the fact that Link 2s exist, and people make these things. So, these are nothing more than, like, Link 2s. You just need them in your graveyard instead. So, yeah. People who say Link 2s are... People saying that are saying Link 2s are bad. Please don't say that. The cards themselves are pretty solid. I think Aaron is insane. Once per turn, if your opponent adds cards to their hand outside the draw phase, you get to just rip a card out of their hand. And if a monster poker is sent to the graveyard, you get to add a Light Dark Reptile from your deck or grave it to your hand. Both of these effects are insanely easy to trigger, insanely valuable, and insanely strong. This card is, like, probably a little underrated for how insane it is. Hand Ripping is already known to be one of the most strongest effects in the game. This thing can do it just by your opponent adding cards to your hand, and this is an insane effect with Zoha. Since Zoha will force your opponent to draw and discard a card, you can then use Aaron to combo with it and rip a card out of your opponent's hand, along with the fact that Zoha is just going to foolish an Ogdoadic for the hell of it, because why not? So, the synergy between the two is insane, and you seriously should be trying this. It just lets you get your opponent down to less cards in hand right away. So, just them searching again on their next turn, they're down to 4 cards. It's going to put some pressure on them. Amnesia, I think, is a lot weaker. She's still okay in her own right, and does help with extension purposes. If a monster comes from your opponent's graveyard, you can send one card that comes from the graveyard. It does work if you bring back their monster to your field as well. But this is not a good effect. It's very situational, and it's more so just tells your opponent, A, keep off the graveyard. If your opponent knows this effect, they'll just avoid this thing. It's very easy to avoid most of the time. Though, it does synergize very well with Ogdoadic, since if they avoid Amnesia, then all their monsters can get Thanos snapped by Ogdoadic in no time. So, that is something about it. The real effect, though, is that if a monster is sent from your opponent's hand or deck to the graveyard, bring back any large deck wrapped off of your graveyard. That's great. It's another free extension, and it means that it lets you continue to do this. You can do this on your opponent's turn, synergizing very well with Aaron's hand rip, since you can just hit a monster and get this off. And then bring back Ogdoadic, so you have a board nuke on top of that to get lots of advantage. For some of the Reptile decks I'm running, we are running the one copy of Vanguard of the Underground Emperor and the Aryan Empress Alasia. These two level 8s are very good extenders. Vanguard lets you just bring it back if you send a monster from the hand, if a monster goes from either hand to the graveyard. And the fact it's an easy to summon level 8 body, and it's big too, makes it unbelievably great. Especially because a rank 8 toolbox variant, you want this essentially at all times. And this thing also lets you make a Nibiru negate in just 4 summons. Your opponent won't even get the chance to nib you. It is situational on hands, but it's still very solid. Next we get Alasia. Alasia is... I don't like her a lot, but, like, she has to be ran. I mostly just don't like her because she's not really recurable. But she's still a necessity. So, simply, she just equips a Reptile from the graveyard to herself and summons herself. Zoha just needs to be sent from the field to the graveyard. So this effect synergizes with the Zoha effect to let you combo it and get Aaron's hand loop off. So you can tribute this for Amnesia or Aaron summon. Most of the time it's Amnesia, though. Or send it to the grave with, like, something else. And then it will do that. You can also just overlay this. It's level 8. 2 level 8 monsters. You slap them on top of each other, make your rank 8. Zoha triggers, and then Aaron goes for the hand loop combo. Very solid all around. Next I got Mamba and Reptile and Yami. Mamba's pretty recent, but it's insane. Simply just summoning it for free if you control Reptile from your hand. Just amazing vibe right there. But also you get to mill a Reptile and change a monster's battle position on your opponent's field. I wish it was any field, sadly. It only hits your opponent, but that's fine. It's still really good, though. It enables some Draglubion OTKs very easily. If you summon this thing and you switch a monster, they're going to be forced to have it in attack position, so you can just run over it with a Draglubion and kill them. This also synergizes with some of the book cards that you'll see in the deck. Since if you book their whole field, you can just flip one up to make sure that they have something to punch them through. Yami also helps with the Draglubion OTKs, but it's also a good defense card, because Aaron can search, you can search Yami, and it's a defense, so it helps prevent OTKs, and make sure that you don't die, and on the follow-up, they don't remove the monster, it comes back. It also counters negates oftentimes, because if you hit a Baron, they gotta negate this. Because otherwise, the Baron is going to be at 0 attack, and then the Yami can literally come back for free next turn, attack over the Baron, so they have to negate the hand effect at that point. Or if they don't, like, you can just normal anything and attack over it. So it's just really awkward for them if they have that. It also hard counters Appo, like straight up, since it will make its attack 0. It can't use its effect anymore. So it's very all around pretty solid, and it's a little underrated in my opinion. I think it's a very solid card, but I definitely can see reason for not running this thing. I understand why you wouldn't run this. I think it's a very interesting card though, and it does actually have some place, especially just being like the only Reptile hand drop that Aaron can search. If you don't search this, then Mamba is probably your next best option. It's still pretty good, though. There's also the Cashtira Fanivers and the Rise Heart. So this package is actually something I was trying for a little bit. It's very recent. This package is actually busted. I know Fanivers probably could get reprinted in like September or something. So if you want to wait for then, August, September, when the tins come out, then you can do that. But Fenrir is a bit pricey otherwise. This is like the only point I would say in the deck, other than I guess Prosperity 2, that is very pricey. But this card just does a lot. It's a good board breaker. It's a free summon. It can extend your combos. Really, because Rise Heart exists. You can search summon Fenrir and search a Rise Heart, and then Rise Heart plus any 4 can get you to your entire engine. There's so many ways to do this, and there's just that option to have extension like that is pretty solid. Seriously, try this package out. I have never seen anyone try this. And it's really insane. You should definitely take a peek at it. It might do a lot more than you'll expect. Just try for a little bit, trust me. Also, you might notice there's no monster hand traps in here. Other than Yami, that does not count because that's more archetypal one. There's actually a reason for this, and that is to play around stuff like talents. You don't want to play into that stuff in this meta. There's a lot of people on thrust and talents. My board's already going to play into it, because I make a ton of monster disruptions. So, I'd rather, if I'm going second into a board, make it so that if they open the thrust or the talents, they're playing with a 4-card hand, basically. Minimize their options in the early game, and then when it gets quickly into the late game, they're overwhelmed. That's kind of the strategy that I want to aim for. You want to just quickly, you want to overwhelm them and just out-resource them. Alright, for the spells. You got a Galaxy Cyclone. I will explain this later, don't worry. This looks the most out of place of anything, but I'll explain this. 3 Snake Rain. I don't think I need to explain this thing. The most busted spell in the deck. Let me just Foolish 4 Reptiles real quick and discard a card. So, can essentially Foolish up to 5 Reptiles, which is insane and just gets you going on its own. Best 1-card combo in the deck. Just needs like a couple discards. Prosperity. I mean, this is just a consistency card. I do think this card's very good. If you want to try some small world with some, like, hand trap lines, you can, but I find that makes it a bit brickier. But personally, that's up to you if you want a cheaper option. Next, we got 3 Water Lily. This card is absolutely insane. Foolishing a Reptile on its own is great. In times where you have a weird hand, this card can be a consistency option, so that alone makes it pretty solid. And then if you have... But it's also Monster Reborn if you have 5 or more repetitive names. And trust me, I will try to aim for this unless I have no other option. This effect to Foolish and Reborn is insane. Definitely a 3-0 for me. I've seen some people run like less. I think 2 is fine, but I think you should be running at least 2. Because it's just that good. Unless you're using it as a small engine. In that case, okay, maybe 1-off is fine. But still, I think it's insane. In the grind game, you're going to need it, and it just keeps you going for a long time. Yeah. 2 tap attacks talent, just, again, nice insulator for hand traps. Same with the 1 Call by the Grave. Helps with break boards, too. And then 3 Book of Eclipse and 3 Book of Moon. These cards are insane, actually. They dual purpose. They're not just disruption. They can break your opponent's board, yeah, and they can slow your opponent down going first or going second. They're very good all around in that sense. They're also good just going first as barriers against hand traps, though. Like, if your opponent has Imperm, like I go Special Curse effect, target the Noya, and they go Imperm on your curse, you can just Book of Moon your curse and block it. I also know Dawn of Creation is going to give us another option to do this, but for right now, since we don't have that, and that'll come out probably in, like, I think November, we gotta use Book of Moon and Eclipse. Still, this also helps a lot against matchups that are not the greatest. Like Kashtira, these cards are insane against. They blow them out of the water most of the time. Until they open that, until you book their Unicorn, and then they open Birth Fenrir anyway because they're insane. And then you can just Fenrir their Birth real quick so that they just cry about it. Yeah, that is pretty solid. Then, of course, the 1 Serpent Strike. Just a good extender. It's mostly like, oh, you already got Water Lily access? Okay, we'll grab Serpent Strike. That's kind of like the idea. It's good in the grind game. It's just a bonus extender. More fun with Noya. It's all around a great card. I don't think it's as good as Water Lily, though. It's worth the slot, though, because it's a good extender. And, like, I mean, look at the other spells and traps. If we ignore Dawn of Creation, since it's pretty recent, the rest of it is pretty mediocre, if I'm being honest. I don't think I want to run any of this stuff. Alright, let's go over the extra deck then. So, we got some interesting options here. So, we got Zeus. Zeus is just, you know, one of the best Xyzes ever. So, you gotta run this thing at times. You don't have to, but it is pretty recently printed, so I would get it. Well, it's cheap. Next up, the Galaxy Eyes package that I run. Galaxy Eyes Cypher, Full Armor Photon, and Cypher Blade Dragon. These 3, you got a lot of room in the extra deck, honestly, for this variant. Since you play it more as a toolbox, you want to have as many options as possible, and these rank 8 options let you quickly decimate boards, especially if they have an Xyz, since you can just joink it with Cypher Dragon and turn it into your Galaxy Eyes package. Cypher Dragon can use material, steal an opponent's monster, its name becomes Galaxy Eyes Cypher Dragon, and because of the Galaxy Eyes, if it's an Xyz, you can also make full armor off of it. Not to mention that that monster will be big. Though, you cannot attack directly other than with Galaxy Eyes Cypher Dragon, so usually I'll do this in main phase 2, or I will do this if I am just trying to steal Xyz, because that gets a lot of value, or if I don't care about going opponent that turn. It's good if you don't need to kill them, because that's also an option. The main thing also is that if your opponent just has a negate that you're just trying to force, like say they got a Chi-Chao, This is a good way to bait it, because they'll waste it on this thing, and then you can just go into full armor, and now you're not restricted by Galaxy Eye Cyber Dragon's restriction either. So you can just keep going and still be able to attack directly, and that means you can finish them off in that turn, because the full armor pops a card, maybe that Chixiao, and then you go into Siphon Blade, popping another card. Most people know about the Galaxy package, and it's very strong. I definitely use it a good amount. It's pretty solid. Now we're going to go into our Draglubion decks, because this card is probably one of the best rank 8s in the game. Being able to cheat out pretty much any dragon number exceeds is insanely powerful. And, of course, I play 3 of them. The most iconic is Numeron Dragon. We all know this card. Literally end the game whenever you want to, and with Mamba, you can do this very easily, since you can force them to play into the Numeron Dragon. There's no avoiding it. Otherwise, we get Hope Harbinger. A very solid rank 8. I think it's pretty solid. I will mention this is also probably the budget end board card. If you want to play more budget, I understand. But this card is very cheap. It's good, and it's solid, but I don't like it as much because it's not good against Nibiru, which is my biggest problem. That is where a certain card will come in, but we'll explain that in a second. I don't make this a lot just because I have a better card to use most of the time, but it does come up once in a while. And then Hard Earth Dragon, this card is probably more of a silly tech for me, but it is still okay. You don't use it under normal circumstances. Half the time, this is actually getting banished off Prosperity. But you more often than not use this as a counter to back row decks. A lot of back row decks just struggle to out Hard Earth Dragon, because there's very few answers they have to it. So if they don't answer it, they lose their entire board. If they manage to, they're often wasting a lot of resources just to out one card. It might leave more of your board able to do more damage to them. All it does is that during your opponent's end phase, you detach a material and banish every single card your opponent controls that was played this turn, essentially. Normal summoned, normal special summoned, or reset. Back row decks just lose their entire back row, by the way, which is hilarious, and it's a win button against them, essentially. So, if I see him against a back row deck, which remember, I do the Zoha and or in hand loop combo, likely, this means I can just change into a Draglubion into Hard Earth to close them out, even in game 1. If I see they're on back row, I can just hit them. And among 2 cards being hit out of their hand, because Zoha makes them draw and discard a card, and then Aaron hitting one out of their hand, I'm suspicious I'm going to see at least one card that exposes that they're a Labyrinth deck, or a, Eldritch deck, or whatever backward deck you want to see. Labyrinth is the most common, but you get the idea. It's an instant win button against many backward decks, since they have a couple answers, but it's not going to always happen that they have the answer, and if you can protect it, it's even deadlier. Which, speaking of protection, is the main card of this deck, Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord. This card's actually really busted, and it is the rank 8 that I will choose to end on for my end boards. Since this card had a monster negate, and with the right hand, Vanguarding Curse can come out with a mirror with them and the Noya that you read off Curse in only 3 summons, meaning you can Photon Lord on 4 summons, and now they can't nib you. So, they are at an extreme disadvantage when that hits the board, because you literally can't even get hand trapped further. So if they had a hand trap for her later, can't do it, can't nib me. All around, this card is unbelievably good. I love this thing. Its Monster Negate is great. It can hit pretty much anywhere. It's just got, some trends. You can use Divine Dragon Knight Felgorn again as another sub for this thing, along with Hope Harbinger. But it won't stop nib. No matter what you do, you're not going to have a full answer to nib. This is the only thing that does it. But the other reason I like this thing is that it has a hidden effect that no one realizes, or really that no one realizes you will actually run. They'll read the effect and go like, whatever, no one plays it. You can take a Photon or Galaxy card deck and add it to your hand. This is a Galaxy card, by the way. So you can search as a Photon Lord. So yeah, it's a one-off, it's a random one thing. You might just look at it like, what? Photon Lord can search it, so you just get a free search in the middle of your opponent's turn with Photon Lord. So it's not just a negate, it's actually a free +1 too. So that makes it just all around insane. And at worst, Zohai just discards Galaxy Clone on your next turn to add itself back to your hand. So like, it's still a free card for a normal summon, and you keep your draw for turn, in case that's something good like a Fenrir, or a Mamba, or a Waterlily. You get the idea. Like, you can keep a better card, and just dodge a Galaxy Clone if you don't have any use for it. And it also makes people play around it, because you add this, if they only have like one trap they can set, they now gotta play around it. So you gotta counter the monsters, and a counter the back row, all in one card. Just really insane. I love this thing. Then Dingirsu, I mean, just a good rank 8. Non-target send and has protection for your whole board. Really good. Just a good rank 8. And don't need to explain much about this. 2 copies of King of the Feral Imps. So, this is actually the only card I ran at multiples in the extra deck. I do sometimes burn through 2 in a standard combo, but usually you want 1 for your first turn and 1 for follow-up. Sometimes you do burn through 2, it's fine though. Mostly you burn through 2 when you go for the Rise Heart route, since that's the 4 that you use to extend the King to get your XP splits going. Yeah, this card is really good. Don't underestimate this thing, it's an amazing card. I guess I'm over explaining it though. Then we got a few Link monsters. Nightmare Cerberus and Azalea. Well, Azalea is pretty good. I mean, you could replace it. Mostly it's Nightmare Cerberus that would be a good fit replacement, or you can run Cobra or Virus Swordsman. Mostly, though, these are to out Baguska. The deck has very few outs to Baguska, so just having some Link monster that can just quickly deal with it if you get into a situation with it is, it's a pretty good thing. Since some people will just, like, not be able to break your board, they'll just drop a Baguska on you, and, you can't exactly out that easily. You can add it with, like, the book cards that you main deck, but again, that's turning into a Mystic Mind situation of just draw the out buddy. So being able to use Azalea and Nightmare Cerberus to out it pretty quickly is very effective. And if you don't want to use Azalea, that is completely fine. There's definitely other options you can use. You can just run a Nightmare Phoenix if you want, or I would also just guess the Echidna. They're all very good options since they deal with it. You just need at least 1 out to Baguska. And then finally, this Gravity Controller. I'm just going to say this. I have never seen a single list run this, and I'm shocked that no one discovered this tech. But it is amazing. Amazing. Just absolutely amazing card. The real reason this card is so good is it synergizes with Water Lily and King of the Feral Imps so well. So there's times where I'll have, like, a Water Lily in your hand, but you can't get the Monster Reborn effect off because you don't have the Reptiles in the grave. But if your King of the Feral Imps is out, if you just, as long as you just make sure you put it in the EMZ, so playing this deck, you want to get into the habit of putting it in the EMZ, just a recommendation. You put it there, and then you can just link it into Gravity Controller if you don't get enough Reptiles in the grave for your first Water Lily. After that, you're going to have plenty. You're going to have, like, 10, okay? You probably will turn it on after that. But Gravity Controller gets you it early, and that is insanely valuable at times just to get your monster off the field. I'm surprised no one has played this deck in an Ogdoadic deck. I've never seen anyone run this thing. I was always experimenting with decks, and I was like, how do I get more Reptiles in the grave for Water Lily early on? And this thing fixed it. Insane card. Insane card. Definitely just all around good. Okay, so that's the deck itself. So I'm gonna go over a few other decks, because these are some, you might notice all these decks down here. I don't run all of these, and there's actually some reasons for them. All of them I'm gonna give some small reasons for. Because I definitely know people are gonna be questioning in some comments, like, hey, why are you not running this? What about this? These are cool cards. I've seen a lot of variations of this deck, and I just want to explain why I'm not running some of these. Urbos, I'm just gonna put in here because it's more of a, I like the card, but it's just not good enough. I like the card. The design looks amazing, by the way. I wish this thing was better. Coatil, I'm gonna say this. You really just ran this card when Chaos Ruler was legal. Because with Chaos Ruler, this card just turned into insane value. Because Chaos Ruler was not only a mill card. The mill was not the value, I would say, of Chaos Ruler. It's the fact that it reborns itself infinitely. Remember, I'm a rank 8 deck. This is a level 8. I can just abuse the hell out of this. And Alert can put it back into the graveyard, too. So, like, even if you banish it, you have a way to get it back. This card is just insane in this deck. Probably this deck abused it better than, I think, almost any deck in the game, except maybe Tearlaments. I mean, obviously, Tearlaments abused it way too well. But this deck can take advantage of that revival effect better than any deck I've ever seen. Like, I don't even think I've seen Dragon Link abuse it as well as this deck can, for the revival alone. But Coastal was only good for Chaos Ruler, in my opinion. After that, I just never found a time I could use it. You sometimes would use it for King of the Feral Imp extension, but I found Rise Heart is actually just a better extender because it gives you a bonus disruption in the Fenrir. And it also can get an extra body out in case you go for like a Noya line with a curse. You can tribute the Fenrir, bring a curse, and Noya, and you have the Rise Heart from the before. So that's an instant King of the Feral Imp right there. Plus you still have the curse out. So it just works better. I just don't like it, honestly. I like the card. I think it's still a very solid card, but I don't have a purpose for it. Lamia, I don't know why people are running this. Like, what are you searching? Alasia? Like, this doesn't have any good search targets. In my opinion. It's only Alasia, which is a good card. But that's not enough to warrant this thing being ran. I don't think this is good. If we get a good search target for this thing, a good level 8 reptile that you can search, a consistency booster, then this thing would be an instant 3-off in my opinion. But we don't have that, so yeah, sucks. Night Sword Serpent, I'm gonna say this card's overrated. I've seen so many people run this thing, but my problem comes down to, This is a flat-out Garnet, and you already run so many Garnets in this deck. You want me to add another one? I don't think this card is very good. It's like... Because the problem is, it's actually a Garnet. If you draw it, it's just a normal summon, which isn't very good. It does nothing else. The value is that it's a free special summon if you mill it, but you can't trigger it if it's in your hand. Compared to something like Tear Elements, where, oh, it's stuck in your hand? Well, I can just use Shiren to send it to the graveyard. And that was fine, at the least, because you could at least get rid of it. But you can't do that in this deck. The only way to do it is Zoha's effect, and at that point, I know most people don't even use it. For me, I use it when I'm hand looping, and at that stage, I don't need an extender like this. This is a little overkill. I'd rather foolish a card than try to go for another extender play. This is a little late for extension. I might get one last body out, and that's it, so... Not really good, especially since it's level 4. I did run this with Chaos Ruler engines, though, since it does help you, like, keep your Zoha out to get the Aaron hand loop combo off, and still make Chaos Ruler and all that. So it did help that, but that was the only time I ever ran it. It's not good, unfortunately, in my opinion. I think this is just a little overrated. Light Serpent, I again just don't... I don't see a lot of us running this thing. I understand why, though. It's kind of a win more. You need Zoha to get this off, and it's not exactly very good otherwise. It's not a bad effect, but there's better options, if I'm being honest. There's definitely better options than this thing. I guess Cyber Strike does work with it, too. But, like, there's better options. You got better options, better extenders. Mamba, like, just completely overpowers this thing. Just use that. Lamia, I'm pretty sure you only run this if you're running a Reptilian package, like, full on. So, that... I think that alone just tells you the reason why I'm not running this thing. So, yeah. Now, Bish Balkan lines. The problem for it's too vulnerable. You do it, you get nibbed. You do it, you get impermed. You're gonna get hit with a hand trap. Any hand trap stops this line. It's so vulnerable. I don't want to leave as many vulnerabilities in my line, and if this is the vulnerable line I take, my opponent's going to know. Like, if I do this game 1, game 3, you know they're gonna hold every single disruption they have for specifically this card. Except maybe an Ash from the Snake Rain, of course. Like, if they have an imperm, they're not gonna imperm anything in your combo. They're just gonna imperm the Bish Balkan, and know that you probably can't extend through it. I just think this is too vulnerable, in my opinion. I think it's funny, though. I think it's a funny line, good for table 500 kind of stuff. I think it's funny, but not the most competitive. Next up, the Melusine and Hydra. I mean, you really have to run a Reptilian package to make these work. I feel like Melusine is just a stall card kind of thing, though. Like, even, like, I tried a little bit after Catch Roll with some Kozol stuff and Melusine. And also Cypher and Blood Omega. That card's actually really good for a level 18 if you're looking for one. But Melusine just kind of feels like a stall card. You're kind of just like, you make this when you're kind of in the back seat. You're behind your opponent in the duel. You make this to kind of just stall for time and get to that next turn. It's not even that great at it. If it had target protection, then yeah, I would 100% agree this thing is a great stall card. It gives you time. But even then, I think most decks have some answer to this thing. But it's just a little bit too vulnerable, in my opinion. Also, the floating effect is a little contradictory. If it has to go to the graveyard, and it can't be destroyed, most of the time they're not going to ever send it to the graveyard. They're usually just going to, like, banish it or put it back in your extra deck. This rarely will happen, unfortunately. Yeah. Hydra, you need Bish Balkan lines or else this thing's kind of meh. Bish Balkan lines make it hilarious, but I'll admit. Same with Ekida. I do think she's okay, though. She's kind of like a replacement King of the Feral Imps at times, and she can get D-Bear. I haven't seen a lot of D-Bear, though, this format. It's still okay, though. The Reptile Walker, though, is what makes it so deadly. It can be very harsh to Reptile Walk yourself and lose your options for your Rank 8 Toolbox. It's still a good card, though. I think it's actually one of the best of these cards. Really solid, and I like this thing. I just don't have the room for it, because I want more Baguska answers than this. Next, the 2 brand games that I'm not running, but they were worth explaining. I've seen some people run them in, like, other lists, including, like, a Horror Experience. Zombie Vampire and Koshiki Jetfire. Zombie Vampire actually falls into Chaos Ruler's problem. I actually don't care about the mill. I played Chaos Ruler for, like, a long time with this deck, before it was banned. The problem comes down to Chaos Ruler doesn't exactly help you with the mills half the time. If you haven't really gotten going, the mills are insane. If you have gotten going, the mills tend to just mill, like, all spells. And, like, one hand trap that you add to your hand. It's not good. Vampire does the exact same thing. You're gonna mill a lot of spells and not really mill anything you care about most of the time. You will mill like one of them or two, but it's not frequent enough to be good. Also, giving your opponent mills. I mean, sure, that can trigger amnesia, which is kind of cute, I guess, but I got other ways to trigger it, and I feel like this is just a little overkill. Also, I don't need the extension for rank 8. Rank 8s do not need to be extenders. They need to be doing something to pressure your opponent, and not just an extender that makes your combo go farther, in my opinion. And that's also the reason I don't run Coaching Giant Trainer. Also, Prosperity. That alone makes me not want to run this thing, but also just... yeah. It's a 3-mat, which is a problem. This deck is not great making a 3-mat. 2-mat is pretty easy. 3's a little overkill, though. And then drawing 3 isn't exactly what I need in this deck. Like, I can maintain my grave advantage and hand advantage decently well, I think. Alright, one more. The Alien package. I think M-Frame's kind of cool, but it's a bit too situational. I never really use that effect of it a lot. It sounds good on paper until you realize how much you need to set up it. You need to get bodies out already, and then you need to have a monster in hand to discard for it, and then you need to crash this thing in. And this means all of this has to go through without getting stopped in any way by your opponent. This is extremely uncommon. Oftentimes you can just do your normal combo line, break their entire board, or even just flat out instantly kill them with a Dragolubia Numero and Dragon OTK. This just doesn't do that all the time. Sometimes it does, but it's just too situational in my opinion. The other mission run, of course, is the Zeraal package. I don't like this. It's a floodgate. It's boring, and, like, it's vulnerable. It's glass cannon. If you get stopped with this thing, what else are you sitting on? Probably, maybe one other Ogdoadic, which might do some damage, but one Imperm, one Kaiju, one Nibiru. That's all it takes. This thing is dead, and you have very little you can actually do. Even with Dawn Creation, this card's just not great. I don't think this card is as good as people make it sound like it is. Even with Dawn Creation, I actually don't like using this. It's just not good. It's too vulnerable in comparison to like boards you can make with this deck. I'll probably make a combo video about this later because this one's already getting pretty long. But I don't like a combo that's absurdly vulnerable to hand traps. This is just a line where it's super predictable and they'll know exactly where you're going. Within my lines, no one really knows where you're going at all. But if they see Zeraal and they know that's your end board card, they will aim for it. If they just see a normal Ogdoadic board that I make, they're not going to know where to hit you because it's so spread out. It's more of a, I spread out my disruptions more to make it less vulnerable to board breakers, since it's harder to hit more cards at once with like an Imperm or a Kaiju or such. You can't hit everything. You can only hit some of it. And that means you gotta choose which ones are going to be the biggest concern to you. And if they don't know what you're doing, that can be pretty difficult. Yeah. Alright, this is going on for like way too long. I'm sorry. Alright, this is the deck itself. I hope you guys enjoy. Definitely leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'll admit this is probably not going to look too great, but I hope you enjoy, and I would love to see more people try this deck out. It's really fun and really interesting. So yeah, give it a shot and have some fun with it. It's definitely up for some experimentation, up for some suggestions. I really want to know anything else I can do to improve this deck. Really want to know how I can make this as optimal and great as possible. I'm not going to count on the new support yet. I mean, you can probably make some adjustments with the new support, and I've already got some plans for that. Honestly, it's probably just adding one Dawn of Creation and calling it a day. But, yeah. Let me know what you think about it. Alright. And that will be me, signing off.